Today's video is a requested video because 3 people have come off their bikes this week and have messaged me and said, can you do a video, or can you give me some tips, like what should I do after I've come off? What advice do you have after a crash? So I have come off my bike quite a few times, so I'm just going to give you my experience, my tips, like what I think about it. So I think the first thing to say is it's highly likely, almost inevitable, that you are going to come off at your bike at some point. I'm not talking a very serious crash. I'm saying that you're going to wob over, something's going to happen. Like it just generally is. If you're riding your bike a lot, it is going to happen. So almost don't think that you're the only person that's ever fallen off your bike, and I'm sure you know that, but it happens to practically every cyclist that I know. I'm going to talk about my crashes or so in a minute, but yeah, so just know that. The second thing that I would say is you have 2 options basically. You can either let it put you off cycling completely and never cycle again, or you have to get straight back on. And I have had experiences of both those. So just very briefly, when I was around, I'm trying to think how old I would have been, 10 maybe. I was probably 10 years old. I've mentioned this in a video before. I was about 10 years old. I was riding my bike home, it's like a mountain bike, riding my bike home, and I was looking at the floor ridiculously thinking like, oh, look how cool it is, look how fast the floor's going underneath me. I was just like looking down at the ground and wasn't looking where I was going, and I hit a parked car straight on. So the car's there, I just literally plied onto the bonnet, like landed on the bonnet, and I wasn't hurt, but I was just started crying because I was like, oh my God. And it was so close. It was like maybe 4 or 5 houses away from where we lived at the time. And I was like, I can either go and be honest and knock on the door, because I didn't at the bonnet. My bike was on the bonnet, I was on the bonnet. It was ridiculous really, like what was I doing? And so I went to the door and I was like, I'm really sorry, I've just run into your bike. And the guy was like, oh, I've just borrowed this car from my boss for the weekend. And I was like, oh no. So my dad and mum and dad had to come, and it was a bit of a mess. Anyway, that all got sorted out, and I didn't ride a bike then for how many years? Because it put me off. I was so scared to ride a bike. It was probably 15, maybe 18 years. I can't remember. I think I was around 10, and then I don't think I rode a bike again till I was like 25 maybe. So 15, well, it was a long period of time, just put it that way. It was a long time, because it always put me off. And then when I got back riding, I was like, obviously, you know how much I love riding my bike. So I just had this thing in my head. I was like, oh, I can't, because I'm going to hit a car, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And I was just too scared to ride a bike. And equally, I think it was a couple of winters ago, my memory for dates is terrible. But it was in winter, and I'd gone out on my bike. It was a little bit snowy. It was a little bit icy, and I was like, it'll be fine. I'll stick to the main roads. Went on the main roads and went on this little back lane, stupidly, and I was going up a bit of a hill. It's quite a steep little climb actually, and I completely slipped on black ice. I went down, landed on my wrist, and I think it was that wrist actually. But anyway, and it was so painful. Anyway, I ended up going to another cyclist luckily helped me because I was on my own. He got his friend to come and pick me up in the van, like a local bike shop that I'd actually been to recently actually. So he took me back to the bike shop. Then I ended up riding back home anyway. So I was like, oh, it'll be fine. And as the night got on, the pain got worse, and I was like, oh, this is just so painful. What have I done? I need to go to hospital. So then I went to A&E. And an x-ray. They initially said, oh, you fractured it, you're gonna have like a cast on for like 6 weeks. This happened at the weekend. I have fractured my wrist. I came off my bike on some ice basically. It was a bit frosty, it was a bit icy. I went out anyway, the main roads were fine. I went up this stupid little lane, which I shouldn't have obviously done. And I was in a mess. I was so sad, I felt so sorry for myself, and I was so mad at myself for going out. Anyway, I went back 2 days later, they checked it again, they went, oh no, it's not fractured, you just need like a splint on it for a while. So I was like, woohoo, I can ride my bike again soon. But as soon as I could get back on the bike, I did, and Jay took me. There's a climb called the Rake, and it is so steep. I say so steep, it's like 20%-ish, 25% at parts. And he took me there, and I was like, oh, damn it, because I was so scared of going up a climb again because I'd slipped off, and I was like, no, I just need to face it. I just need to get on a bike again. Obviously, it wasn't icy, but I was still a bit like, oh, what shall I do? And I just did it anyway. And then afterwards, I was like, yes, that's the best thing I could have done, is just get straight back on. Got to get straight back on. And then equally, there's been a couple of times where I've fallen off just stupidly. There was one time I came back, I'd not had the bike long, in Adelaide. I'd cycled back home from work, and I don't know how it happened. I kind of unclipped the wrong foot, I think. Actually, I wasn't even wearing clipless pedals at that point. As I got off the bike, I always go off, get off my bike to the left, and I kind of wobbled a bit to the right, and then just ended up in a heap on the driveway. And so that was one silly crash. And another silly crash was at traffic lights, where I'd used clipless, I was clipped in, and then the traffic lights had changed, and I was expecting this woman, I'd like kind of come up behind this woman in the car, and I was expecting her to set off because the lights had changed. She'd obviously not seen them changed. I didn't have enough time then to like clip back out to put my foot down, then just fell on the pavement. So they're all my crashes. And what I would say now, so yes, we've all had crashes. What I would say is, and this is what I've done for every single crash of mine, is learn from it. That is the biggest thing that you can do from a crash, is learn from it. What have you learned from that? So for me, I learned to look where I'm going from the first one, hitting a parked car. Look where you're going. Massive basic rule of cycling, just look where you're going. Yes, I look where I'm going now. The second one was, don't go out when the weather is ridiculous and there's a possibility of you coming off on ice. I will never ever go out when it's like that again, because I don't want to come off. The third thing is, don't expect drivers to do what you think they're going to do, almost. So you have to kind of be thinking like, well, are they going to do this? Are they going to pull out? Have they seen that the lights have changed? Don't always assume, that's the right thing. Don't always assume that they're going to do what you think they're going to do. So keep that in mind. And yeah, they're the things that I've learned from it. You have to learn from it, because there are lessons to be learned for any kind of crash. And obviously, if you know you've had this really serious crash and there's nothing that you could have done differently, then I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about where crashes have been almost your fault, because all my crashes have been my fault. So yeah, just take away from it what you can. And I think the sooner you get back on the bike, the better, because you don't want to leave it 15 years like I did, because that was ridiculous. So yeah, and I actually ended up, the bike got sold because I was like, I never rode that bike again. We got back home and I just never rode it again. I was like, I don't want to ride it. But now I just got to get back on the bike. So for you, if you feel a little bit anxious, or just look at how you can learn from it, and just learn from it. I keep saying that, but that's all that there is to do. What else can you do apart from learn and get back on your bike? For me, I just can't not ride my bike. I absolutely love it. And if it's something that you love, then you just need to get back in the saddle. So I think that's pretty much it today. So that is how to get back on your bike after a crash. I hope that has been helpful. I hope it has been useful. If it has been useful in any way at all, or you just basically enjoyed listening to me talk about when I was 10 and crashed head on into a parked car, because it is ridiculous, just give me a little thumbs up if you wouldn't mind, because it would help me out a lot. If you are subscribed, well, thank you very much. And if you haven't subscribed, then subscribe, because you get to see more of my face if you would like that. So yeah, that is it for today, and I will see you next video.